how have two so fundamentally similar coins become so different? And that's what I want to talk about today. Of course, I want to talk about BNB specifically, but I find it quite interesting that BNB, which effectively is like basically a ripoff of Ethereum, is effectively not at all the same as Ethereum when it comes to price performance. We've seen BNB actually do quite well over the past couple of years, while we've seen Ethereum otherwise really struggle. And so I want to kind of break that down a little bit, discuss maybe my thoughts as to why, some of the major items that I think kind of play into this. And then of course you can make your own decision. We'll also go over the price and talk a little bit about price and what we could be seeing out of BNB as well. So anyway, without further ado, let's go on and continue along. First off, I want to take a look at CoinGecko just to give a sense of kind of where we're at with BNB. BNB is the 5th largest coin. It is just shy of a $90 billion market cap currently. It is actually ahead of Solana currently. It's also trailing XRP, Ethereum, and Bitcoin. Of course, if you include stables, it would be behind USDT as well. But just like normal crypto projects that aren't stable coins, only sitting behind Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. So definitely up there in the mix, done quite well. As we can see over the past about a month or so, BNB's kind of turned into a bit of a stable coin. It hasn't really done a whole lot here. We can see while Bitcoin has bounced pretty dramatically, Ethereum's bounced pretty dramatically, XRP's bounced okay, and Solana's really bounced. We have, of course, seen a bit of a bounce from BNB, but nothing too crazy. So I also want to talk a little bit about that as well and why we could potentially be seeing that. And I also want to take a look at the BNB to Ethereum chart, which we will roll into right now, just to see, like, we've actually seen basically over all of 2024 Ethereum bleed to BNB, meaning BNB is actually becoming worth more relative to Ethereum. We can see back here at the end of 2023, this would have been, let me get an exact date, the beginning of December 2023, one BNB would have been worth about 0.09, close to 0.1 Ethereum. And then of course now we are seeing it worth about 0.3, so a 3x relative. And then at the tops here, we've actually gotten close to 0.4. So a really crazy move kind of to the upside relative to Ethereum, which is again pretty interesting because BNB and Ethereum are fundamentally very similar things, and they're not really that much different. And so I think part of what we've seen here and why we're seeing some of this bleeding of Ethereum, or I guess vice versa, the gaining of BNB relative to Ethereum, has a lot to do with, I think, two different things. We'll talk about the first one here, which is Binance. Binance, of course, is the largest crypto exchange in the world. They kind of own everything. As we can see here, the Binance wallet is dominating wallet transaction volume with a massive 82% market share. I mean, that is absolutely insane. I think right here, this is kind of an indication in itself as to why BNB has done so well, because I think there's a lot of people kind of holding on to that old adage of, like, you know, where the users are, so will the volume and the value and things like that. And so I think that's a large reason as to why BNB has held up so well. I also think there's a little bit of a larger reason as to why we may not have seen BNB kind of bleed while ETH has been bleeding. And I think really what we're seeing there is kind of some of the fragmentations or the segmentations of different crypto markets. Ethereum, of course, is largely an American, or I guess I should even just say more generally Western. That's been kind of like that's been the group of people who's kind of largely been following Ethereum, supporting Ethereum, a lot of that type of stuff. But what we started to see over the past several years is Solana's come around, and Solana has done quite well. A lot of people in the West are building on Solana, and I'm not saying that this is just limited to only people in the West, but I think you'll understand my point here in a second, where a lot of people have kind of started to look more favorably on Solana and less favorably on Ethereum. However, BNB is very strongly used in the Eastern markets, in the Asian markets, and things like that. And so, of course, there's going to be a lot more of a kind of an insulation or a insulationary, I guess, protection on BNB relative to Ethereum, just because, again, while everybody is using Solana, BNB is far more entrenched within the Asian markets. And so it's less of a risk to kind of be subsiding to Sol or Sui or any of these that maybe have like the ETH killers and the new tech. Everybody's been trying to be an ETH killer basically for the past like 5 or 6 years. And of course, if we do look at the market caps, ETH is still the number 2 coin. So it's not like anybody's actually killed ETH so far, but we haven't seen ETH really do well relative to everything else. Now, of course, if we come back and we take a look at the markets or the charts here on BNB, we can see BNB has done absolutely fantastic. Again, if we look here towards like the end of 2023, this would be like October 9th. And then we take the tops that we saw back in December, almost 300% up from bottom to top. Again, the bottom being just over $200 and the top being just below $800. I mean, that's just shy of a clean 4x right there. Pretty impressive. But of course, since we have seen kind of that top come in here on the 2nd of December, we've kind of been bleeding a little bit. And while we started to see a little bit of a jump here, not really too much going on. We've kind of found this support kind of in the mid to high 500 ranges, and then we haven't really started to see that bounce come back. We have, of course, started to see bounces sort of come back with some of the larger alts. Maybe Solana, maybe not quite as much, but like Ethereum, we've started to see that bounce come through. Bitcoin, we've started to see that bounce come through. Sui's been just absolutely ripping. I mean, there's been a lot of these that we've started to see a lot of that performance come back, but we haven't actually seen that out of BNB quite yet. And so, of course, we can see the momentum. It does look like we have, started to put in some of the higher lows. Haven't necessarily found any of those higher highs yet. But I do think over time we could actually see that. And if we actually move back down to the day, we can get a little bit more kind of clarity of what's going on here. And so we could see, probably a little bit of a wedge forming here. We can see kind of that descending trend line coming this way. And then we could see the ascending trend line kind of about in this range. Again, just super rough approximations here. But we can see price is consolidating. And so eventually we should start to see price either break out one direction or the other. Given the kind of fundamental tailwinds that we are seeing in the crypto markets, I would imagine that this would be back to the upside. But again, in the short term, we just don't know. We obviously saw a very similar type of consolidation and a wedge forming right here. We'll just go ahead and draw this real quick. But we saw this similar type of thing forming. And of course, we broke right on down out of it. So not always a guarantee that we will break up. This is, of course, never a guarantee. Anything can and will happen in crypto. But it's just something to keep an eye on here. Of course, we are starting to see on the short term, potentially a little bit of a breakout here. We are running into this resistance that we got rejected by kind of at that $620 range. We'll see if we can break through it. Maybe, maybe not. But overall in the short term, I don't think it matters too much. I just do think in the long term, we are going to see BNB perform quite well. I think the way that they've been able to kind of entrench themselves into the Eastern markets really has become quite a substantial foothold for them. And we'll have to see kind of how that ends up going. But of course, kind of moving back to the previous point, 82% of all transaction volume is being done on a Binance wallet. And of course, Binance is almost directly or semi-directly integrated with BNB. So really, really kind of big trend or a big moat that they've built around themselves there, Binance has. So if you are looking to trade BNB or Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything like that, I do have that link in the description below to BTCC. BTCC is a fantastic exchange. I've worked with them for quite a while now. You can see here I do have several trades here open and doing well. We've got XRP at 150%, Sui at 90%, Ondo at 12%, and then Bitcoin at 4%. Sui's done, of course, really, really well, as I mentioned. Probably will be taking some profits here quite soon just because we have seen a pretty strong pump, and it would not surprise me if we saw a little bit of a pullback here. But overall, I mean, things looking really, really good in the crypto market and the alt market more generally. Maybe we start to see a little bit of that, that alt rotation. I don't really think that we're primed for a full-on alt season, but I do think we could see a little bit of more limited and isolated alt rotation. Again, I don't think that's going to mean that anything and everything is going to be a winner. I think it'll mean, bits and pieces here and there are going to win. And so, of course, you need to start kind of trying to figure out which those are. We've talked about several on the channel that I think could have, better possibilities or better likelihoods of being successful. If you are interested in, following along and staying up to date with the coins that we're talking about and some of the things that we see breaking out in the market, some other narratives that we could be picking up on, things like that. Of course, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that type of good stuff. Stay tuned for more content because I do make almost content basically every day. So, there'll always be something for you to watch if you are interested. And we'll be, again, of course, staying up on what all the things that are going on in the market. So anyway, also if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, concerns, whatever, just drop those in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on BNB. Do you think my take about them kind of being more entrenched in the Eastern market and somewhat insulated from this like Ethereum Solana type of competition? Do you think that's largely correct? Do you think I'm off base and I should be looking at something else? What do you guys see there? I'd be really interested to see kind of what your thoughts are there and hear more about your thoughts on BNB more generally. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.